With a Kaibo juice gang ready to roll. Grab your paddles, let the good times flow. From the great white north to the wild unknown, we take the best canoe trips, make memories we own. Under the stars by the campfire light, we sing our songs and we laugh all night. With our trusty canoes, we explore the land. Every river, every lake, with the Kaibo juice gang. So grab a paddle and join us on the ride, singing songs side by side. Navigate the waters, laugh and cheer. In the great outdoors, the Kaibo juice gang is here.
Hi, and welcome to Kaibo Juice, where we talk about all things backcountry. My name's Ronnie Lebo, I'm your host, and joining me today, I thought for our first show it would be most appropriate to invite a couple of members of my annual canoe trip crew. I've got Ron and Adam. Ron's been with me since the very beginning, when we first started doing our trips almost 20 years ago. Adam's been here, with us?
12 years.
12 years already. And I think it's appropriate to talk about how we got into backcountry camping. And I'm going to start with Ron. Ron, what was the first time you ever went on a trip?
Okay, so my origin story. So I was in Scouts from the age of about 8 until 18. So in our troop, we did a lot of camping where our scoutmaster would just drop us off on a Friday, pick us up on a Sunday. After university, I decided I wanted to do more canoeing. So I went and bought a canoe and just started with a buddy of mine from university. We did about...
Just in Ontario?
Ontario, Quebec, that's about it. We spent probably between 30 and 50 days every summer, starting at first when the water broke up until October, canoeing. So that's my story.
Adam.
My story's a little different, a little bit of a pre-story. I grew up with Ronnie. Ronnie and I went to elementary school, junior high, and high school, and we reconnected again through Facebook approximately 15 years ago. Ronnie is a prolific Facebook poster, and he posts a lot of stories regarding his camping and his fishing, and I had to ask him some questions about how to catch the elusive lake trout. Ronnie helped me out, and we became friends again very, very quickly. At which point in time I switched job roles at my work, and I was working in Ronnie's neighborhood, where Ronnie is a director of the annual community fair. I ran into Ronnie. We started talking. He talked about his canoe trip, and he says, all you got to do is lay down $300 up front. I peeled off three $100 bills out of my wallet, out of whatever thought went in my mind. I was going to go on another canoe trip after years of never camping, after summer camp, not having to camp again. I was finally going to go on another canoe trip, and it was all with Ronnie, and we've become like amazing friends since.
But that's not the first time you went. You went at summer camp.
I went at summer camp, but I've stopped since summer camp until
That's
I met
most
you.
people do. But summer camp, you went from what ages?
15 and 16.
That was the only time you were at camp?
Yes.
And those were the only two times you were on a trip, like two trips?
Well, no, I went when I was younger as well, but the last two times I have memories of it where in my when I was 15 and 16.
What was the first trip?
When I was maybe 11.
What, a parent took you?
No, it was through summer camp. I went
so it was for summer
It's
camp.
all through summer camp. But
Right, I'll never forget that. Adam came up to me at the spring fair and dropped money in my hand and went, I'm in. Just out of the blue, in a suit, he came over to me. He had his staff with him. It was pretty funny.
It's still humorous to me that Ronnie's still collecting from other members of our crew to get their yearly dues.
I only collect because people stiffed me. We had one guy back out the night before the trip, and I was left holding the bill. So that's why I said, okay, everyone, it makes people actually serious when they put a deposit down. It's way easier to cancel at the last minute than it is if you gave a deposit, which is why I started taking the deposits. Also, we had so many people that wanted to go on the trips that it made sense that first come, first served, right? You book your seat, you're in. I've always liked doing that. My story's a little different. My dad took me when I was a kid. I don't even remember how old I was. I was like 8 or 9 years old, 10 maybe. And he took us to Algonquin Park and we had a great day. Sun was like going down, setting. I was throwing bread in the water. There were fish jumping. It was magical. Went to bed that night with raccoons raiding all of our stuff. And then we woke up in the worst down. We've been on some bad trips, but this was like, supposedly they were airlifting people out of the park that day. And my dad gave up and we canceled. And we basically just like, I remember paddling out with a foot of water in the canoe. And then I hadn't gone again. But then when I was 13 years old, going towards 14 that summer, I went to a posh summer camp and I had some kid that the minute I walked into the cabin started bullying me. So I signed up for a canoe trip to get away from this kid. And I loved it so much, I signed up for every one of them. So out of the 52 days of summer camp, I ended up on 36 days of canoe trips, which was basically Lord of the Flies because you're being guided by 17-year-olds. You're 13 years old. There's no rules, no nothing. And it was a magical trip. I basically, a magical summer. I basically did all of Algonquin Park and Killarney that summer. So I flash forward a few years. I went a couple of times. I went once with a girlfriend. I went with two buddies of mine when we were in our 20s. But then one day I end up moving in next door to Ron and he's putting the canoes on his car. And I'm like, where are you going? He goes, I'm going on a canoe trip. I go, I love canoe trips. So we decided to do a street canoe trip. And that year, 4 of us ended up going on a canoe trip, our first, just a quick 4-day. And somehow it turned into this annual 9-day trip, plus other trips, plus ice fishing weekends, plus that we do every single year. And I would actually have to say that it's the one thing that I look forward to the most out of anything that I do in a 12-month period.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, Ronnie. We talk in terms very lovingly that we have 2 seasons. We have our canoe trip and then planning for next year's canoe trip.
It's true. We're not planning the canoe trip. All we're doing is thinking about the canoe trip
and improving our gear.
Right. Improving our gear, getting new gear, showing each other our gear, setting up our gear,
Shaking out our gear.
shaking out our gear.
Complaining we have too much gear.
Complaining we have too much gear. That's the thing. I want to let everyone know this, that we are not professionals. In no way, shape, or form do we say that we're professionals. We just have been doing these trips for so long and learned from so many trials and tribulations that what we do well. So, anything that we can share, and I have shared a lot of times, which is what led us to actually do this podcast, anything that we could share is not necessarily going to be the most professional of opinions, but we've been all over the wilderness of Ontario and we've yet to encounter any major problems. We've had problems, but we've never really had anything that's been a dire emergency or that we haven't been able to handle. And if it's funny, because behind Adam is our canoe trip logo on the shirt. We decided we needed a logo one day, and the Latin on the logo, which one of us came up with, and he's no longer with us. It says, "We will find the way, or we will make one."
It is from Hannibal.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's from the Roman legionnaire, not a historian. We will find a way or we will make one.
And we've had
that
trips
is
like
what we
that.
did.
We've had plenty of
We had
trips
a
like that.
bushwhack through.
We've had trips where we've put a canoe down on a portage and then spent 2 hours looking for it. We've had trips where we've had tornado storms come through. We've basically encountered everything. Giant rainstorms.
Oh, even like portaging, where you have to lower the canoe over the ledge and have someone at the bottom to grab the canoe. Where was our first trip?
Our first trip, we went to Algonquin with Dan and Joe. It was just the 4 of us.
That's right.
And that was uneventful.
And that was just a canoe or smoke or something like that, wasn't it?
It was just, we just did wasn't that the Ragged? We went down south to Ragged, Big Porcupine, Devil's Staircase, all of that? Or was that a later trip? See, that's the thing. All the trips are starting to blur. But I remember the next year was the brutal trip where you decided we had a book by Hap Wilson. and no one had been on these routes in like 50 years. So small little streams turned into major bogs where we were digging out our
That wasn't
shoes.
the second year. That
Are you
was,
sure?
yeah, that was
Third, maybe.
four,
I don't
five
think so.
years
I think that
into
was
it.
pretty early on. It was like the second or third year. That was a brutal trip. And I remember that when we looked at the map, you go, this trip's easy. Let's make it harder. We went places that no one had been to.
Well, the
In
portage
the
markers
portages
were
were
in
gone.
black.
They were gone.
On the map, they were in black. Normally, when it's red, they are well used. When they're black, it's unmaintained. So these were a few unmaintained portages. There were eight
Most
of
of the
us.
places we go
There
are
was eight of us
unmaintained.
on that trip,
Yeah.
and the mistake was half of them had never been in a canoe before. So I made a short trip, but a short paddling trip meant a lot of portages
That were not real
that were,
portages.
yes, unmaintained portages.
Right. More like bogs.
And we had people
Bogs
that
and swamps.
did not understand take it easy. They carried too much the first
Right. We
time.
had two big guys with us that thought they were Superman and that they could carry a ton of weight, and that killed them on the first day. We had guys almost crying on that trip and mutinying and telling me that they were going to kill Ron for making this trip so long.
Oh, they were going to kill you, but they couldn't get out of there alive, so they decided not to.
And then we were scaling cliffs with canoes. We were like, the bugs were ferocious. We had one day where we had to do 8 portages and it was pouring rain. You know, like the type of rain where you can't see like the front of your car and the windshield wipers are going as hard as possible. One guy throws out his back at the very beginning and we had to end up carrying him for the whole time. Miraculously, he was okay after dinner after we all ate and had a nice warm fire going.
And one guy, when he was on walking over the Beaver Dam, sort of
He
slipped
fell off.
and right underneath.
Everything that could go wrong
Couldn't
went
see
wrong.
him.
So we basically learned from that first trip all the things that can go wrong very quickly in a short period of time. When you came, we were already well seasoned, Adam.
Well,
Like-
the other thing is when we started, my theory was distance. I like to paddle a lot. We would paddle for 8 hours a day. As we've grown a little
I
older,
much prefer portaging to paddling.
well, when I say like just distance wise, we would go spend 8 hours paddling and portaging. Now we're getting older. We like the canoeing just as much, but fishing, camping, sitting around the fire, preparing is a
I don't think it's just that. I think
bigger
it's also we were young and we were doing trips where it was go, 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 and see as much as possible. And now it's more like get to a campsite. And we've always planned our trips now where we spend at least one day on each campsite so that you can actually soak up the surroundings and enjoy the campsite. So we do a little bit of fishing, we explore the woods a little bit, we go on hikes, and then we move. So in 9 days, we do like 3 or 4 campsites, which allows us to enjoy the trip a lot more, as opposed to the early days where we used to explore. And then once we've explored, we found places we wanted to go back to, and we've actually gone and enjoyed. It's about being out there, right? It's not about killing yourselves. And the older we get, I think it's harder to kill ourselves.
it's easier to kill ourselves, but we're too smart and we
Right.
don't do that.
Right, but at the same time, you guys keep on bringing more and more gear every single year, which makes it like we used to go so light when you look at the early pictures, and now it's like I got a new toy,
Yeah,
I
but-
need a CPAP machine, I've got a monster tent that holds 8 people, and I like my luxury. I've got a queen size bed with a frame and a box spring. Like, no, that one's a
Little
joke, but
exaggeration.
a little exaggeration.
But the reason we bring more stuff is because we're not traveling every day.
Right.
So when you're traveling every day, you have to go lighter, else it's going to take you like 2 to 3 hours to pack up every day. When you go light, it's an hour to pack up and leave. So
I also don't mind carrying it. I don't like going back 3 times on every portage, but you know, if the portages aren't hard, I don't see any reason to not bring it in if we're not going to kill ourselves that day. We usually do it where we leave the campsite. Like we've learned, we used to leave at like 8:30 in the morning and you get to a campsite by 6. And now we have a leisurely breakfast. We leave around 12 and we get to a campsite around 4:30. We always spread it out so that we're only going so far so that we're not arriving in the dark. I mean, stuff happens and we do have those moments where we're still looking and it's getting late. But for the most part, we've learned that you should only cover so much distance in the day so that you're not, that's why we go on 9-day trips. Actually, the reason we go on 9-day trips is because we learned that the same cleanup applies whether it's a 2-day trip or a 9-day trip. So you might as well spend as much time as you can out there.
And also, we're going on Crown land
A lot of
quite
the time.
often.
No, we do parks too, but
we do parks, but more often we're going on Crown land. That gives us the flexibility to travel different distances and not worry about the reservation system that provincial parks have, where you have to be on this lake
by a
or
certain
on
time,
this time or at this site. Or so it gives us more flexibility to say, this is a great site, the fishing's great, let's just stay here for an extra few days, or just move on.
I like having that option of not having a planned schedule. And if we like a site, then we stay there for 2 days and we just mosey, book it when we're going to the next one.
I agree, Ronnie. I think another factor in terms of why we like Crown land camping better than provincial park camping is, with our eclectic group of people that come with, and we're three, and we have different skill sets. For our listeners, Ronnie is our leader. Ron is probably one of the most capable trippers that you're ever going to meet. And there probably would have been a time where I would have been considered the WL, or the weakest link on the trip. And the whole team can only go as fast as the weakest link. And the weakest link adds a little bit of a dynamic to the group in terms of how fast they can get up in the morning, and how fast and how much paddling they're going to be willing to do, and certainly how many portages they can do. And I'm looking at my two friends here, and Ronnie will pick a canoe and pick a pack and run an entire portage. It's actually quite inspiring to watch these two. And Tall Ron will again pick a tons of packs, paddles, and a canoe, put them on his head, and start marching and start going to it. I'm so grateful that I was not on those first couple of trips that you went with the bogs and, the beavers and the dams, because I don't think I'd ever come back.
Look, there's two got the original trip. We had 4 guys. 2 are no longer coming on these trips.
Being a bigger guy, Ronnie, it's not easy to do these portages for a bigger guy. I'm always watching my ankles. I'm always watching so I don't do something stupid like twist an ankle and then be a burden on the rest of the team. But you did make rules at during those times, which actually benefited me, and I wanted to show that I was worth something and not the weakest link on a trip. And one of those rules that you made is that the guy and the fella who takes the food barrel is this big.
Yeah, 8 guys is a lot of food at the beginning,
and it's heavy, and it's the heaviest pack out of all of them. And the guy who takes the food barrel also gets to take the food barrel as it diminishes as we eat the food. It gets lighter and lighter. So by the end of the trip, it's a little bit lighter. So, bravado wise, I took the food barrel on that first trip I did, and I didn't complain. I took my time, but I didn't complain about it. And certainly by the end of the trip, it was a little bit of a blessing that the rule states that the guy taking the food barrel gets to take it even when it's empty, not really knowing that
but we don't, it's never empty. We always load all our stuff into it that's loose.
You put more stuff into it, but it's usually not as heavy as it is.
It just becomes easier to pack up a campsite when the food barrel goes down, because we just throw all our Helinox chairs into it and everything.
No, but great memories of our first trip together. And
your first trip, sorry, go ahead.
My first trip was French River. And funny enough, our last trip that we did last year was French River, and it didn't seem the same. And we certainly did a lot of paddling and not too many portages. I think there was one or two portages and liftovers, but just a fantastic trip. And we saw a lot of wildlife, and just a wonderful time out there in the wilderness. And the blueberries were abundant, and what a difference it makes when you see different things in the petroglyphs and the blueberries, and you get to see things that most people don't get to see. And I don't think it's a lot about that too. I think it's a lot of it has to do with just disconnecting. Where we go, there's no cell phone service. We don't have anything that we have to worry about. You're kind of free, and then when you come back, you kind of realize what's important to you. It's almost like in City Slickers, where they talk about you have to find your one thing. I think that happens when you're out there. And for a lot of us who work so hard and we all have city jobs, getting out there is just like an escape from everything that's our day to day. And I think that's what makes it magical for me, is just like that whole sort of fantasy of we're alone. The therapy of disconnecting is a huge aspect of why I like to go on the canoe trips with you guys. So putting it down and discharging the devices and disconnecting is a huge value for me, at least going on the trips with you.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I love just going out there, just being away from the city, being away from technology, and just getting back to nature and just absorbing the energy of the world.
There is an energy. You come back, we come back
it's
refreshed.
wonderful. It is.
I always find it amazing that after a 9-day trip, when we come back, my mind is still there. I need a couple of days just to sort of like snap out of it, like decompress. Like I'm almost like my head is still back on that trip, even for like a week or two afterwards, which is why I always do the videos and the photo album, put everything together while it's still all fresh in my head and I'm still living it. Like I'm living it even when we come back for like days, sometimes weeks after.
100%. But Ronnie, it's funny. We have that one guy on our trip. There's usually the one guy who just can't get away from his devices and his technology. And every site he goes to, he's up there with his phone and he's trying to locate that one bar of beacon from a signal somewhere. And
That's why we keep planning going farther and farther.
all of a sudden he finally gets enough of a signal and makes that phone call, and it's like to his mom, and he's on the phone for like 15 minutes.
No, that only happened once in the last like 10 years where we've had cell service. We have started bringing a satellite phone, and that only made sense as we got older.
It's not a phone, it's a beacon.
It's a beacon, but it still made sense as we're getting older. We have aging parents. We had kids in school. Ron and I, we never actually brought anything ever until that one time when you and I were fishing on a lake and we had a search and rescue helicopter come.
And we thought the megaphone was going to come out. Is this
Oh,
the Lebo party?
Ron and I are fishing. This search and rescue helicopter just like came flying towards us, hovered over us for, well, how long was it? Like 20 seconds and then continued. And I looked at Ron and I said, did your heart just skip a beat? He goes, oh yeah. I was like, I was expecting like the loud, like all of a sudden on a speaker to say, are you the Lebo party? And ever since then, we've been bringing a satellite phone, but we don't use it. So what we basically do is we turn it. I've always said to my wife, no news is good news. So we turn it on in the morning. We turn it on at night. If there's no messages on either way, then we continue.
Again, the main reason we use a satellite phone now is to get weather forecasts.
No, I don't like that. That bothers me.
No, this way we can plan.
bothers
If we're
me.
gonna if it's gonna be a sunny day the next day, we can then say, okay, let's go.
I
If
don't
it's gonna
like
be
it.
raining, we can say, well, let's figure it out.
I don't like it. It takes away from not knowing what's going to happen. I actually do not like that aspect of it. That's technology. I don't enjoy that at all.
It's my device. It's for a little bit of a pitch here. It's a Garmin InReach, and it's a fantastic device. And the Garmin InReach is our SOS device. It's our beacon. It's not a satellite phone, but it does have the ability to map, and it does have the ability to get forecasts, and it also has the ability to send off a couple of satellite messages to your loved ones back home as well. They can track our performance. It sends a bleep up into the satellite, and they can track our actual movements on a map. The funny part about this is that I got this because my loved ones, my wife, thinks what happens if something happens to Adam. He's never going to be able to get out again. And Ronnie,
I would leave you there covered in rocks.
You know what, Ronnie?
We'll send out a helicopter to come get you.
This has been very vocal and apparent that you would leave a guy behind.
What's funny is we have a guy who comes on our trip who actually
the Navy
had
SEALs
to
would
do
not
that.
appreciate that, but that's okay. We're not in the Navy SEALs. But the funny part is that I got it for the purpose of saving me. And Ron and Ronnie, well, Ronnie here says, no, I need this beacon so that somebody can text me if something happens back in Toronto,
Right.
or something happens back at home.
Right. I don't want to miss like a funeral because I was away for 10 days.
So it's just a different mindset that I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and certainly if you have to call a helicopter rescue, the cost of
It's never happening.
No, but again, if it has to happen,
Never say never, but I don't ever see that happen.
Helicopter rescues are kind of expensive, and helicopter fuel has gone up in the last couple of years.
I truly believe that Ron would cut my leg off and carry me out faster than he would call in a helicopter.
You know what? Honestly, if you two had an ability to get on the Amazing Race, I do believe you would be one of the top finishers.
We've had to carry people out.
We've had to carry people out.
Well, put them in the canoe.
There was
solo
one guy I
paddle.
thought we would be carrying out, but like those days are over. I don't like the technology at all.
So what
I don't
about
like the weather reports. I like not knowing what's going to happen. We've had times. What's very amazing about our trips is that, like, Ron and I, who have been on 20 trips together, we've traveled to Vegas together, we've gone on weekends together, we've done everything together. We've never argued. ever. I've screamed at guys on these canoe trips. You've heard me scream at guys on these canoe trips.
Screamed at me.
Scream at us.
Yes, you
I
have. That
but-
was just once.
Yeah,
That
but you
doesn't
and
count.
I have never, ever really had an argument. And it's funny how we both sort of see the world differently. Like, I'm the one that's always running around when a storm's coming in, battening down the hatches and like, Ron, we got to get all the tents. And Ron's all he sees is butterflies. And what do you say?
Butterflies and
and
rainbows. That's
like,
all there is.
Nothing bothers him. So in a way, he actually has managed to
Calm you down a bit.
calm me down a bit when situations get rough. But sometimes he actually doesn't. He's not as concerned as he should be, I
this
think.
leads to a good question. I'm going to ask you a question. Like for every grouping of people that go on these canoe trips, and we have our core group of guys, and we always bring in somebody new or somebody wants, they see your pictures, they see your Facebook posts and our videos on the canoe trip. What is your vetting process, or do we have a vetting process?
No, I'm always like the more the merrier. I truly believe that, like, let's have the party. I'm not saying the party where we keep people up in the middle of the woods till 4 o'clock in the morning, but I think that there's a great dynamic when you have 8 guys all like busting each other's balls for 8 days. And that's
Right.
generally what happens, right? And it's a lot of fun. And when you have 4 guys, it's a lot more passive, like a lot more calm, a lot like it's way more fun with more people. So my attitude is whoever wants to come, but everyone has a job. Look, we have one guy on the trip who will be on this show, which is our friend Slava. Slava's job a lot of the time is just play the guitar. He's our music man. And that's a job in my mind. One guy going to get the firewood is a job. One guy stirring you love doing the bacon. That's your job in the mornings. While we're doing all this other stuff, you're making bacon. That's a very important job on a canoe trip. I want my bacon in the morning. Ron's the coffee barista. In fact, half the time we wait for the coffee barista to get up before. How much noise have we made on trips just to get up our coffee barista?
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, the new people that are on the trip that are doing this for an experience that have not done it before, we're not expecting a lot from them in respect to the amount of work, but you know they can do dishes, they'll carry the packs.
Yeah,
they'll
usually
clean
dishes
up.
are a big one.
So the amount of work that Ron and I do is basically, I would say, 50% of all the work, and everyone else does 25, does the other 50%.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ron. My first 3 trips that I did with you guys, it was a huge learning curve, and my first 2 trips, I was absolutely not going to be the weakest link. That was my biggest fear in life, is to be the weakest link on the trip, and I did every.
Yeah, we're also 15 years younger.
15 years younger, but while
12 years younger.
I still understood my limitations, Ronnie, and while that's the case, I decided to do every single dinner dishes, which you learn very quickly is the least favorite job to do at the camp, and it's actually not so bad. It's somewhat therapeutic. You go down to the lake, you bring the soap, you bring the sponge, and you do the dishes.
You do not put the dirty soapy water in the lake, though. You put it.
Yeah, that's a mistake a
On
lot of
the,
people make. You take it
on
into
the
the
ground.
woods.
Of course, I put it on the
People
ground.
will get upset when they
course
say
I-
you wash the dishes in the lake. No, you have the water at the lake. You have your dish pan there. Then you
No,
throw
you
the
have your little
in,
camping, and I learned in the first couple of trips. I learned what was expected of me. I learned how to do the jobs that other people don't want to do, and make that your reason. Make that the reason why you'll get invited back to do more trips. And everything accumulates. The gear accumulates. The better sleeping bag, the better mattresses. It all accumulates over time until you have more plastic bins in your garage full of camping gear that you know what to do with.
But we've also learned a lot of hacks and tips, like tricks, as far as even doing those types of jobs. Like, think about how many years we used to do dishes, and now what we do is we bring a stack of paper plates. A, we have fire starter. B, we line all our plates, and then 98% of our meal goes on the campfire. At
Very
the end
easy
of
to very easy to clean the plate.
That was
afterwards.
actually a major game changer.
That was a huge
Just
game
paper,
changer.
just the very thin paper liners.
Yeah.
Oh my
and
goodness.
throw that in the fireplace, and
And then you just have a little bit to wipe off on.
Oh my goodness! The first 3 trips with Ron and Ronnie and the guys without paper plates, and without the propane stoves, we used to put our pots and pans on top of a grill that Ronnie would bring. Ronnie would always bring
I always bring a grill.
bring a grill.
I still bring a grill.
And what we would do, because the bottom of the pots and pans get all sooty with all the fire, so we used to put soap on the bottom of these pots and pans with the hope that
No, that actually works. That's dish soap. You take dish soap and you do coating on the.
But I was the one doing the dishes, and I was the one washing these things. And I tell you, it still takes a fair bit of elbow grease to get off the soot, even with the soaped up bottom of these pots and pans.
That's why I always like. Well, I don't like it, but for doing dishes, I love sandy beach campsites because the sand is a pumice. Like it's like it helps clean the dishes really easily.
I gotta tell you, having our propane, which we'll talk about probably in other episodes, but having our propane stoves come along with us for the trip is another game changer, because
that was a mistake.
The cleanup of your pots and pans on a propane stove, it's clean, it's efficient, it gets the food done really quickly.
We had a fire ban. That's the only reason we brought the stoves after how many years? We were going, 15 years before we started bringing stove. We always brought a burner, like one propane burner, but we had a year where we had a fire ban and we had to bring the stoves. And then we went, oh my God, the cleanup from this is like non-existent compared to cooking on an open fire.
And therefore we bring more gear.
Right.
And more fuel. So,
yeah.
But again there's advantages. You're just, in the morning, pop on the stove, have the fire. We don't have to worry about having a fire if it's raining. So
we can do it under a tarp when the rain. We can make our coffee. It makes a lot of sense. Again, those are the type of luxuries that I don't mind hauling in. Even if it's extra weight, one extra bag. I mean, what are our stoves? It's one extra bag with the propane and with stoves in it, with our bear hang. We have basically 2 supply bags.
There's so many different types of propane stoves or butane stoves that are available for campers these days. And generally speaking, we bring every single kind. We have a guy on our trip that brings with
a jet boil.
And he's very happy to boil up a very quickly, a bit of water to make an instant coffee. And he always has the good instant coffee from Starbucks, which he is a bit reluctant to share with other members of the of the team. But again, he spends the money on the gourmet, instant coffee, and it's his enjoyment. That's what he lives for, is his instant coffee. But I think you pretty much we could have a whole show on coffee.
We could totally have a show about coffee.
Coffee is so important to us on these trips. And I'll do a quick shout out to a good friend of ours who passed recently. His name is Gordon. Gord was our barista for so many years, and you could always find Gord always, as soon as we were unpacked, getting out the coffee gear and just sitting by the fire. And I gotta tell you, coffee tastes that much better in front of a roaring fire with your feet up, sitting in your camping chair.
That's how I feel about scotch. Sorry, man. Coffee's a breakfast drink, and then
coffee
then
comes
you
out
switch.
at all times. So
I think every time at like 4 o'clock when we're getting to a site, you guys are like, coffee? I'm like, no, that was like 7 hours ago. Now I'm ready to start drinking.
Yeah, some of us like afternoon coffee that aren't as hyper as
some of us like morning tequila. What was I going to tell you? It's funny because recently on one of the outdoor groups, there's plenty of them on Facebook. They did a poll. How many people do you usually travel with? And 4+ was the lowest number. We're always going 6 to 8, but usually most people are like 1 to 2, 2 to 4 maximum. But it's funny how many trips that we've encountered on our trips, like on our annual trips when we've been out there, where they've been large groups, and surprisingly, we've bumped into a lot of all-female groups on our trips.
And one all-male group.
One all-male group. But for the most part, I would say when we bumped into large groups, it's a group filled with women that trippers.
Large groups tend to move slower because just doing the logistics of the portage.
For sure.
You have to
just emptying the canoes.
Loading the canoes, it takes a lot longer. So people that want to do distance really have a hard time with anything over 6 or 3 canoes.
There's always a question that I see posed as to how far should I plan on traveling in any given day? And you've always said it best.
It's 15 kilometers a day, including portages.
No, but you said about how fast you paddle per hour. I think you said we go 5 kilometers an hour.
You can go between 3 and 5 kilometers an hour. but that's not considering wind. If you're going into the wind, you're at 2 kilometers an hour.
Right.
If you're going with the wind, you're going 6 kilometers an hour.
When I
even
throw out my canoe
faster.
sail, we're going 20 kilometers
so
an hour.
When you get your sail up.
Oh, I love when I got my sail up.
If you plan your trip for 15 total kilometers per day, that's a good day. You know, you're going for 6-7 hours.
You know, there's going to be
including
diehard trippers listening to this going, I go 40 kilometers a day, man, and I do 17 portages, and you guys are like...
I've done 60 kilometers a day for a few days when I had to, or when we're on a river, or when the wind was to the back and the conditions were really good. But
I
if
like
you're
when we-
doing
Sorry, go ahead.
if you're doing provincial park camping where there's a lot of portages and
17 groups waiting to get out of their canoes
and
behind
you have to go there, 15 kilometers a day is what I always planned for. But
Right.
if you are with just one canoe, easily you can do 25.
Well, you and I could probably go really light if we were just going the two of us.
If
I really believe
we
that. We'd
could
sit on
go-
rocks and we'd eat
We
like
could go
kind
very
of
light.
Ziplocs.
Most or a lot of people will do one portage, bring a canoe and their pack, and that's it. No going back.
Right.
And again,
Where do they put the drones?
I've always just said, okay, you have to do 2 portages.
No, the guitar's a gift. No, the guitar is a necessity. Like, I truly believe that the guitar makes
It's very
the trip.
enjoyable.
It
It's very
really
enjoyable.
does
Yeah.
make the trip. Like, it's changed. It was a game changer bringing the guitar and singing around the campfire, or like when it's a rainy day and we're sitting there and we can't move.
It's always fun.
It is fun. Same thing with I'm not even going to say that. Like one of the guys brings a backgammon board. That's his what's it called?
It's his
His
personal
luxury
His
item.
luxury.
And everyone jumps
Just
in
like
on
Survivor,
that one.
everyone gets one luxury item.
That's
the
right.
problem is we bring lots of luxury
I bring
items.
extra fishing lures. That's my luxury item.
You know, it's funny how you guys sort of quantify how long we're going to be and how many kilometers we can sort of do in a day. But generally, when I've been with you guys, we're paddling no more than 3 hours a given day to get to the next site. And
No, it depends on the
for
day.
3-4 hours, and then there may be a portage sprinkled in between there, but it's usually not more than that. And we'll usually leave it about, you're correct, about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. We'll leave it, we'll be packed and ready to paddle, and we'll hit the next site by about 6 o'clock.
The latest.
The latest, and we'll hit the next campsite and
But
start.
when we
It
were in
depends on the trip.
the time in Temagami where we went all the way to Aston, that was a long day.
That was a long day, but
And-
those will happen, right? And we're all
Yeah.
flexible enough to be able to,
It
listen,
just means Ron and I do 4 extra portages.
well, you guys love you love the portages. I like.
I
the
love
paddle.
it, except when I'm lugging someone's bag that's 150 pounds because they've got a latrine in
Yeah,
there,
but you know
a
what,
kaibo.
Yeah, your kaibo. Honestly, Ronnie, you complain about it, but nobody knows this. But when you have the canoe on your head, the smile on your face is ear to ear.
Yeah, and I also come
You
back
love
with
it.
my abs showing after every single trip. I lose it every Christmas, but I gain it all back every Christmas, but I lose it on every trip. That's my workout out there, and I come back strong. But I absolutely hate the fact that I'm going back for a 3rd or 4th trip because
You know, I'm huffing and puffing.
Everyone's
and doing
brought
the
too
best
much
I can
stuff.
and stopping in the middle for a little bit of a break, and
no, there's no breaks.
you got a canoe on your head and you're running a portage. You know, a 2
And
kilometer.
not just a
portage.
canoe. Sometimes it's the Grumman, which is like 85 pounds.
Another story that we picked up a couple of Grumman canoes that are about 80-pound canoes and big monster beast tanks. And where do they go? They go right on Ronnie's head. You know, one of the smallest guys on our trip is one of the strongest, but Ronnie takes the canoes. The portage is his mastery, and same with you, Tall Ron.
Yeah, I just prefer my carbon fiber canoe.
I
than
usually
my
do.
Kevlar
I usually
canoe.
do I usually do 2 packs and the canoe. So I'll take the canoe. But it's funny how often people get it wrong, and they'll take the lightest thing first, and that always angers me when I come back on a portage and I'm coming the other way and I see someone taking the lightest stuff, because you should always take the heaviest stuff, and then everything gets lighter on every other trip. So I usually take the canoe first just to get it over there and in the water, and then I go back for the heaviest bag that I can find, and then I usually have to go back for another heavy bag. But
Portage courtesy. No, not everybody has it.
no. No.
Courtesy on the show, you take the heaviest pack first.
You should, because then it makes the other ones lighter, as opposed to doing like the 1K, 2K, whatever it is, and then coming back and the next one's twice as heavy, right?
Again,
So
we have to mention the fact that we don't pack as efficiently as we should. So coming near the end, you'll have a whole bunch of small bags that
Yeah, that's always bothered me.
that should have been placed in one big bag, but
I try to
that's-
carabiner everything so that it clips onto whatever I'm carrying.
it's hard. People like their personal stuff, need things handy. It makes their life not necessarily more enjoyable, but you can have more security saying, this is my stuff. I need something from in here, and it's easy to access.
That's what my fanny pack is for. Everything that I want on me, I have on my fanny pack. Then I have my one backpack, my tackle box, which clips onto the backpack, and my shoe bag, so that when we get to a campsite, I can get out of my my water shoes and put on dry hikers for the campsite. That's it. That's all I try to have loose. All the other loose stuff, always, it kills me. It kills me. Oh, and I have my fishing rod that clips onto my backpack as well. But everything is always like contained onto one bag.
Yeah, but then we should get a bag that can carry 6 fishing rods.
No, the
And
fishing
so-
rod should be in a small little tube that's
but
clipped onto your backpack.
We have 6 tackle boxes.
We don't need 6 tackle boxes.
No.
Yeah, but
This is what I'm always bitching about. We don't need, like, y'all go, someone will say, who has aspirin? And 5 guys pull out a bottle of aspirin. You need 1 bottle of aspirin. I can understand if you have meds that you need to bring, but like 6 pairs of work gloves, 3 saws, right? Like that stuff's not needed. I have to go through everyone's packs before we leave on the trips.
people like their stuff, and it gives them peace of mind and security.
Right.
And whether they use
But I
it
don't
or
like
not is
carrying those.
irrelevant.
I don't like carrying their
Doesn't
stuff.
matter. We're an older group of guys. We're not, teenagers that, here's
Teenagers have boom boxes, and that's another thing that's bothered me. I've been on canoe trips where you see a summer camp coming across a portage, and there's like Drake playing on the speakers that they're carrying around their necks. That kills me. It's like you're doing it wrong.
You're just getting old. You're just getting
Old in the
old.
cupboard. You're doing
When
it
I was
wrong.
young, I brought those boom boxes. I've never owned a
How do
boom
you see
box.
moose bears or loons when you've got boom boxes playing music when you're coming across a portage? The whole point is to I try to be stealthy when I come across a portage.
Yeah, I've seen lots of moose, lots of bears. Stealthy is not necessarily good if you find an angry bear or an angry moose.
Yeah, we've been there. We've been there, but I don't know. It's everyone's got their way of doing things. I think that's what it basically boils down to. And it's just a matter of there's right ways to do things and wrong ways to do things. You can bring in 3 tractor trailers full of gear, but it's all the way in the way that you plan the trip and bring it in. And it's funny how many people that we've bumped into on trips where they'll show you on the map where they're going, and you're like, there's no way you're going to be able to get there by the time that you're doing that in 2 days? It's never going to happen. You're looking, they're not even holding the paddle right? And we've encountered a lot of those people. Do you remember I think the best time was we were way up at the top of Opiongo, and the water taxi let off this German couple that looked like they just arrived in Canada and went, hey, let's go on a canoe trip.
And they did just arrive in Canada, and it was their first canoe trip, and he had no idea how to paddle. So I gave him like a 15-minute lesson on how to
In
paddle.
the middle of the wilderness, you're
Middle
giving
of
them.
nowhere.
First, you showed them how to put on the backpack.
Yeah.
Then you showed them how to hold the paddle. And then we left, and it was like the worst monsoon rain that we've ever seen as we were driving home, which they got caught in. I always wondered how that trip turned out for them.
Butterflies and rainbows.
Butterflies, rainbows, and butterflies.
I think one of the most telling stories that I can give you is that we did a trip, and I can't just remember where it was. I think this was one of the trips to Donald, and there was a 1 kilometer portage, and it was up a mountain and down a mountain, and it was a relatively easy portage. It was a nice groomed trail.
That's the Little Napoleon.
No, Napoleon was Kukugami.
No, that's Chiniguchi.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're right. That's Tamagami. You're right.
That was
Sorry,
awesome.
never mind.
Okay, so I do the portage, and some guys, portages are also a matter of how fit a person is and how much cardio they have. And fair enough to say I didn't have as much cardio as I probably should have to do it. And I make the big mistake of expressing myself to Ronnie about how difficult that portage was, in which
Oh
I
yeah.
was I received portage humiliation about how, come
That was
on.
the hardest portage I've
And
ever
then,
done. That was the hardest portage you've
and
ever
of course
done.
we take too much gear, so everybody has to go back and forth 2 or 3 times. These guys would do 3 times, maybe even 4 to my 2.
Everyone laughs at us for that.
You
You
know,
know that, right?
and
But that's the
it's-
way our trip goes.
And
That's the way it
we're
is.
going to address that. We're going to start taking a little bit less. But then I go back to to checking out Facebook, and I see another group of buddies that did another trip to Algonquin, and they're at the end of the portage, and right there on the sign, this was a 7.5 kilometer portage.
Yeah, I did that when I was
And
13.
I'm looking at my buddies, and they're all at the end of the portage. Like, what a great photograph opportunity to be completion of a portage for 7 kilometers. I'm complaining about a 1 kilometer portage, and I'm huffing and puffing.
There
And
are
yet-
no 7 kilometer portages.
I'll show you the picture.
It's probably the Dixon Bond Field, which is almost six.
I'll show you the picture. So, in
I got
any
a great
case, it
story
was a
about
whole
that
lot
one.
longer than anything that we've ever done. I think the longest portage I've ever done with you guys is maybe 1.5 to 2 kilometers.
Yeah, but we
total.
do 6 because we go back 3 times.
You go back. big guy doesn't go back and forth 3 times.
People are like, how many kilometers did you
And I
carry
did-
stuff? I'm
and-
like, 50 kilometers. They're like, but I thought you only did like 6K of portage.
And again, if you're we get back to the conversation about the weakest link, and the weakest link has to make sure to avoid portage humiliation, that his pack is not heavier than most because he's not carrying most of his own stuff. So again, you have to learn how to, there's always a group leader, and Ronnie is our group leader. And when you do a trip, his word goes, and whenever there's a conflict, it's Ronnie will settle it. But that also gives Ronnie the right to humiliate us and to degrade us and to belittle us for our lack of his effort. And when I say that,
That's part of my enjoyment.
I say that with true love to Ronnie, because there is nobody else who comes out of the woods with 3 trees. There's nobody who collects more wood than Ronnie. With
Yeah, I kind of overdo it.
with a smile.
That's
on
my
his face.
OCD. I don't believe you can ever have enough wood.
But again, when it comes to like the makeup of your team and your crew, you have to have a little. Listen, if everybody was the boss and the leader, there would be conflict the whole way through. So we it certainly is appreciated to have someone with your skill sets. One of our also biggest.
I don't
thrills
look at it like that. It's funny because I look at it like I plan the whole trip. I pack the whole trip. I buy all the food for the trip. But I totally believe that, like, when it comes down to it, that Ron is my co-captain. I don't ever look at it like I'm the leader.
No, but fair enough. But Ron is, like, in terms of proficiency, there's nobody more capable than Ron. But you two are on equal footing here when it comes to that. But your persistence is.
He's been way more places than I have,
Ron is
and way more remote
fine, you got
places than I
experience,
have.
But he's more lax. You're a little bit hyper, but you're also persistent.
Which gets everything done.
Okay, so
Yeah,
on our
well,
canoe trips,
ADHD and OCD is a
Ronnie
superpower
does the
out there.
planning for does the food planning, and usually he only plans for enough dinners minus 3 or 4. We insist on having fish dinners, and we're always fishing, and we always got to catch.
9 days, 4 fish dinners.
Right. But there was one time it was starting to rain, starting to drizzle, and we got to the site, and this was a fish night, and nobody could catch. We were fishing from the shore, we were fishing from the canoes, nobody could catch. It's starting to come down even harder. Everybody has gone under the tarp or gone into their tents. Who is still out there with the most persistence? The stubborn Ronnie is out there
Yeah, I
in the
wanna
middle of the
eat.
lake. And he doesn't come back, and we're saying, do we send a party for Ron? We can't see him. He must be around the corner. He must be around the island. He comes
No,
back.
Ron was with me on that one. Ron was with me. You're talking about the one where
Yeah.
we were like in Blind River?
Blind River, and they come back and they have a string of fish, and the rest of the guys got to eat that day because these guys decided that while everybody else was taking shelter in their tents, they decided to go out and not give up, I guess. And
Yeah, it was getting dark. I got that one lake trout just as it was getting dark, and I lost it. And I said to Ron, one more time around,
Yeah.
one more paddle around, and we got the other one that fed us all. But
And now
yeah,
Ronnie does bring emergency provisions in case we don't catch, but we've never not caught. And we
that's
really
not true.
we've
No,
always,
on a trip but we've had nights where we didn't catch. We've never had a trip where we didn't catch and have our fish dinners, but we have had nights
where
where
we
we've
had
had
to
to
change.
where we've had to change meals.
Yeah.
You know what, Ronnie? I think you got to check the expiry date on those craft dinners that we bring with, just in case we don't catch, that we never eat, because they're probably gone bad by
I hate
now.
craft dinner.
But you bring them with in case we don't catch. And the
It's an
whole-
emergency portion because was it the French River? It was the French River with you.
Yeah, it was with me.
We got stuck on a campsite for like 3 days because the waves would have like sank large ships and we couldn't move. And that's when I started bringing the emergency portion in case we have an extra. We have
In
like
case it happens, right? So,
I always tell my family, my wife and everything, like, wait at least 24 hours before you start worrying. Because there's times where we might have a day that we just can't move in our plans. But that's why I started bringing like the mac and cheese just as an emergency portion. But last year we had a night where we could not land a fish. We caught a lot of fish. We just couldn't get any in the boat. So we ended up eating the mac and cheese with turkey bacon that we ended up crumbling into it. And it was good. I don't love it, but it did the trick. Out there, you could eat the bark
It
off
was
a
our
tree
ca-
with some
it was our
sugar on it.
calories
You'll
for
be
the
happy.
evening.
Exactly. Just sustenance. Sustenance.
sustenance.
As usual, I've enjoyed every moment that I share with you when it comes to these trips. Let's do this plenty more times. I'm sure that we have a lot to talk about as far as tips, trip, gear, everything that makes our trips something special. And thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you.